Welcome back, everyone, to Stories That Shouldn't Be Told. Tonight's tale takes us deep inside an abandoned hospital where the lights never stay on, and one room still remembers the night a patient begged not to be left in the dark. Every story is a warning. Some promises, once made, can never be broken. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share it with anyone who loves a good scare. And tell me in the comments, would you keep the lantern burning or risk facing the darkness? Your support keeps the stories alive. Now, let's begin. I started working the night shift at the old Riverside Medical Center about 6 months ago. The pay was decent, and I needed the money for college, so I didn't mind the weird hours. The building was built in the 1940s and had that old hospital smell that never quite goes away, even after all the renovations. My job was simple enough: monitor the security cameras, do hourly rounds, and make sure no one broke into the closed wings. The hospital had been downsized years ago, so half the building sat empty. Just dark hallways lined with unused patient rooms. The first few weeks were normal. I'd bring my textbooks and study between rounds. The only sounds were the hum of old fluorescent lights and the occasional car passing by outside. But then, things started getting weird. It began with the elevators. They would move between floors on their own, doors opening and closing with no one inside. I mentioned it to my supervisor, but he just shrugged and said the building was old and the electrical system acted up sometimes. Then the lights started acting up. Every night, around 3 in the morning, the fluorescent lights in the third-floor hallway would flicker and dim, then go completely dark for exactly 20 minutes. During those 20 minutes, I'd hear footsteps echoing through the darkness, and what sounded like someone desperately flipping light switches that wouldn't work. Then I started noticing the cameras. During my rounds, I'd check the monitors and see movement in the closed sections. Just shadows mostly, or what looked like someone walking down the empty hallways. But when I'd go to investigate, the halls were always empty. One night, around 3 in the morning, I was doing my usual patrol of the third floor when I heard something that made my blood run cold. It was coming from room 314. The sound of medical equipment beeping and whirring, like life support machines running, and I heard the hiss of a ventilator, the shallow whoosh of breath that wasn't min, and a smell like scorched dust rose from the walls as if the circuits were burning out. I stood outside the door for a full minute, listening. The sounds were definitely coming from inside, but that was impossible. Room 314 had been stripped bare months ago. I had my master key, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get it in the lock. When I finally opened the door, the room was pitch black and silent. I flicked on my flashlight and swept it across the empty space. Nothing, just bare walls and a single hospital bed frame with no mattress. But as I turned to leave, I heard a voice behind me, weak and raspy, like someone on their deathbed. "Please don't go." I stood outside the door for a full minute, listening. The sounds were definitely coming from inside, but that was impossible. I spun around, but the room was still empty. I ran back to the security desk and called my supervisor, but he didn't believe me, said I was probably just tired and hearing things from the active wards below. The next week, I decided to bring a camera with me. If something was happening in that room, I was going to document it. I set it up in the hallway, pointing at room 314 and let it record all night. When I reviewed the footage the next morning, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Around 3:15, the door to 314 had opened by itself. For about 10 minutes, you could see a faint glow coming from inside the room, like the light from medical monitors. Then the door slowly closed again. I was terrified, but also fascinated. I had proof that something was happening, but I didn't know what to do with it. I started researching the hospital's history and found something that made my stomach drop. In 1987, there had been a power outage that lasted 6 hours. 3 patients in the intensive care unit had died when their life support systems failed. One of them was in room 314, a patient who had been in a coma for 2 months after a car accident. According to the records, she had briefly regained consciousness during the power outage and kept asking the nurses not to leave her alone in the dark. She died 20 minutes before the backup generators finally kicked in. Now everything made sense. The elevators moving on their own, the lights going out for exactly 20 minutes every night. The spirit was reliving that terrifying experience of being left alone in complete darkness while life support failed. Every electrical disturbance in the hospital was desperate attempts to turn the lights back on, desperate not to be abandoned in the dark again. Now I understood what I was experiencing. The patient was still there, still afraid of being alone in that dark room. Every night, around the time of death, reliving those final moments. I made a decision that probably sounds crazy, but I couldn't just ignore what I'd discovered. The next night, I brought a small battery-powered lantern with me. When I heard the sound starting from room 314, I walked over and opened the door. "I'm here. You're not alone." The medical equipment sound stopped immediately. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then, I heard that same weak voice, but this time it sounded peaceful. "Thank you." I left the lantern in the room that night. When I came back the next evening, it was still there, but the battery had died. I replaced it with a new one and left a note. "So you're never in the dark again. I never heard the sounds from room 314 after that night." The elevators stopped moving on their own, and the shadows disappeared from the security cameras. Whatever had been haunting that place had finally found peace. I still work the night shift at Riverside Medical Center, and I still replace the battery in that lantern every week. But I learned the hard way that I can never forget or be late changing it. One week, I got caught up with midterm exams and forgot to replace the battery until Thursday instead of Monday. That Tuesday night, something terrible happened. It wasn't just at the hospital anymore. The spirit had followed me home. Every light in my apartment started flickering at exactly 3 in the morning. My refrigerator, TV, and computer all shut off at once, plunging me into complete darkness. I could hear the voice echoing through my rooms, crying and begging not to be left alone. When I went to the grocery store the next day, the fluorescent lights above me kept going out, leaving me standing in dark aisles while other shoppers looked around confused. Even my car radio would cut to static whenever I drove anywhere. The spirit was everywhere I went, desperate and angry that I had abandoned it to the darkness again. When I finally got the new battery in on Thursday, everything went quiet again. But now I know this is my responsibility for life. The spirit is counting on me, and if I ever fail again, it will be trapped in that darkness forever. I can never quit this job, never move away, never forget. The responsibility has already started to eat away at my life. I've missed classes, failed assignments, and walked into exams with bloodshot eyes because I can never truly sleep before 3 in the morning. Every night, even when I'm not at the hospital, I stare at the clock in dread, waiting to see if the lights around me will betray me again. I no longer go out with friends. I avoid sleepovers, road trips, anything that might keep me from being close to that lantern on the right night. The thought of forgetting, of being late again, gnaws at me constantly. It's not just paranoia, it's survival. Margaret has bound herself to me, or maybe I've bound myself to her. Either way, this lantern has become my burden, and I cannot shake the feeling that it will outlast everything else in my life. But until when will I have to carry it? Will it be until the day I die, or is there something even worse waiting for me? And that was the end of the story, In the Dark with Me. Some burdens never fade, and some lanterns can never go out. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these dark tales alive. Until next time, stay in the light.